Gentlemen, as people who want to get better at things and want to improve, we kind of innately run away from this idea of being ignorant or inexperienced in any capacity towards anything. If we're trying to get better at a martial arts, say, or we're trying to learn about a specific thing in a book that we're reading, or anything that requires a progression from where we are, we kind of innately are wanting to run away from the space that we find ourselves in. When you get enthralled with something like a martial arts, say, it is deeply rooted that you're trying to get better and better and better, and with that, there's kind of a level of annoyance at the fact that you're not better than you are at this point in time. Now, what I want to speak about today is how we can really recognise the virtue that comes in ignorance. Now, as someone who's found themselves in these positions, I'm going to speak on my own behalf, and then I'm going to call on just what I feel is helpful for you guys with this. Now, I have found myself consistently throughout this year looking back and recognising that I am in a more progressed and more positive state than I was, say, this time last year. And with that, I've developed this kind of nostalgic perspective on the way that I've been looking at myself, because I look at who it was a year ago who was yet to experience what it's like to get better at things. And I look back with this idea that kind of I no longer have that feeling of what it's like to get started with a lot of things, because I'm already past that point. And I'm kind of looking back and thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that feeling of starting again? Because that's the exciting part. Now, this is something that I also spoke about with a good friend of mine, happens to be my brother, who had kind of emphasised this idea that actually the times when he was beginning things and learning things and really kind of getting into his first experiences of things, they do have this sort of nostalgic, pretty kind of just this element to them that no longer exists once you get past that budding stage. Now, the reason why I think it's so important to recognise your ignorance on this and recognise your lack of experience as a good thing is because this is really the most exciting time of all the things we do. And it's the one time with anything that we do that we can only get once. There's a real value and there's a real joy in learning new things. And when you get past the stage of being an absolute beginner at things, that weans off and it's not the same anymore. Of course, you always have things to learn. We're always going to have more and more things that we can learn about. But if you're someone who knew nothing at all about the way the mind works, and now you're 2 years into knowing how it works, you're starting to become more ingrained and looking at more and more complex things that you're still touching on things you already knew. You're just getting a deeper understanding of things. You're no longer getting that kind of, wow, I didn't know anything about this. And there's an absolute value in this. The question that really sparked my mind for wanting to speak to you guys about this was something I saw on Joe Rogan that was speaking about how many millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires, the richest of the rich, who happen to find themselves upwards of 60, 70, 80, would trade what they have to be a poor 18-year-old. Now, I believe it was Jordan Peterson who was saying about this. In fact, I know it was. And they both unanimously agreed that the position of ignorance in youth is so much more valuable than being older with any, whether it's money or whatever it is. A position of youth when everything is yet to come is undoubtedly more valuable because it's all yet to come. And I think we're so quick to try and get away from this idea, to try and grow up too fast or experience things too quickly because we're so infatuated with this idea of getting better at things. Now, of course, this is a feature, not a bug. This is part of the process. When you get interested in something, you're going to want to get better at it. And by wanting to get better at it, you're not going to be content with the place you're at. And if you were, you wouldn't get better. So this is where it's just important to, as I say, I wanted to make a point of recognising where you find yourself. And if you're getting irritated with the fact that maybe you don't know so many things about something, or you don't know what you want to do with your future, recognise this as a positive state in your life. Because within this ignorance, you have all these things yet to come. And once they come, they won't be the same anymore. And that's not to put a negative spin on this world, because the world is an incredible thing. And with experience, you will continue to experience great things. But there's nothing like finding something for the first time and having that ignorance. And you will look back at one point in your life and recognize that actually you would love to be back in that stage again. I find myself consistently in this train of thought when it comes to martial arts, because I'm pretty new to martial arts, and with that I'm not very good. So of course I'm getting irritated with the fact that I'm looking and going, oh, I'd love to be really good at this. But then even now I'm looking back and I'm thinking, do you know what, actually, how exciting would it be to have some knowledge of where I could go with this, how interesting and how good this could become for me in 6 months' time when you started. Now, for just a bit of backstory, when I started martial arts, I was terrified. So this wasn't going on in my head at all. And I didn't get that feeling because I was so scared, and I couldn't look at it and go, well, this is going to be really interesting to actually start something for the first time. I also think, and this is something that I've experienced as a result of my psychedelic use, is when you are in a stage of life around kind of 20 upwards, for a few kind of the years around 20, I'm 20 myself, you're so quick to want to see all these new things because there's so much in the world. There's so much to go and see, there's so much to go and do, there's so much to experience. And with that, you just want to get out there and you want to see it all. Now, I think, of course, as I say, I will caveat everything I say with this video that there is a temperance act. You have to want this because it's just natural. You want to get better than you are, see more than you've seen, all the rest of it. You want that, of course. But once you've seen it and once you've done it, it's not the same anymore. I find myself, as I say, I was speaking to my brother about this, and he has been to most of the world, and with that, he's got a deep experience of these things, but it's not the same as what it is that I have. As someone who's not yet gone, I've got a real palpable excitement of what I'm going to see, because I have no idea what I'm going to see. And he's already got that. He's already experienced the experience. So he can no longer go somewhere with that idea of, wow, I have no idea what it's like to travel, because even if he goes somewhere he's never been, he's been to so many places. I think it's pushed all too often nowadays that we need to grow up too quickly, and we need to experience things, we need to experience it, and we need to be away with it, and we need to be going and doing the next thing. Between a consumer society and just a general kind of, I don't know, this idea that we should become grown-ups really quickly and get through things and I don't know. I was having a conversation with this bloke, or well, an argument rather, and a comment that he made to me was, why don't you grow up, or something like that. I was throwing a ball in a pool, and this made me think about this. Was actually, I thought, no, do you know what? One day I'm going to be your age and I won't have anyone to throw a ball in a pool with. I'm at an age now where this is something I can still enjoy. And this is what I mean, is I think we should protect our ignorance and we should protect our youth as best as we possibly can, because it only comes around once. And though, of course, we have each day, if you're 20, you've got 365 days of being 20, as with every single year. And there's not much difference between 20, 21, 22, upwards. But you only ever have the experience that you have in any moment once. And with that, you want to control and recognise your stance as best as you can, as to not let the moment pass you by. I think the big the encapsulating point that I'm wanting to make with this video is that in the pursuit of progress and in the pursuit of getting better at things, it is all too easy for us to wish our days away and wish more experience upon ourselves and not really recognise where we find ourselves. I think there's potentially some real value in acknowledging when you're not good at something, that means you are not yet good at something, and that at some point you're going to be good at it. And fuck me, man, there's such a real feeling of enjoyment and excitement about learning a new thing, something that you've never experienced at all, something you've never felt before. Having that experience is, there's nothing like it. Quite literally, there is nothing like it. And as I say, if we get too infatuated with this idea of growing past these times, you're never going to really grasp what it was to be the beginner. And I think there's such a romantic joy to being the beginner. Of course, as well, one thing that I will say just as I think about this is that there's kind of an ego thing attached to this, as I say, with the martial arts, that my ego is hindered as a result of my inexperience, because I know that I'm not very good, and equally well, I know I don't look very good, and as someone with an ego, I want to look good. So I'm trying to accelerate that to such an extent that I'm not enjoying the time now. And I think as well, the pleasant thing that comes with this is, really, it is a very incremental process in that sense, that you don't have one particular moment. Say you're learning about a particular topic at the moment. The one session that you put towards learning that isn't going to be the be-all and end-all of your learning of that topic. There will still be a number of instances where you can, before you've got a real grounded understanding of something. So you've got multiple cases of being able to grasp and access this ignorance. And what I will take this one step further with is that, as I touched on briefly a few minutes ago, this ignorance is always accessible to us, because we always have today, and there's always something to learn. As I say, I'm finding myself now looking and going, I'm not feeling that same level of kind of romance about finding out new things, because I know I'm looking at kind of psychological type things, and because I know a few things about that already, the things I'm learning are somewhat similar, so they don't touch the same, wow, I didn't know that. But then there's always some way to kind of pivot this and change this, I believe. I've recently been looking into Charles Manson and his connections to MK Ultra, and that's been something really interesting. And of course, that's got, if you don't know about this and you wanted me to make a video on this, I'd love to make a video on this. So just if you're watching this and you want that, shoot. But MK Ultra, essentially, I should divulge a little bit, I suppose. MK Ultra was essentially a mind control program, and within this program, the CIA used various methods of mind control, including hypnosis, sleep deprivation, various methods of torture, and namely the use of barbiturates, amphetamines, and hallucinogens in interrogation circumstances. The hallucinogen that was frequently used was LSD, and there is a real strong evidential trail that the Charles Manson murders were... Charles Manson was pretty much unequivocally, in fact, unequivocally, he was a subject of the MK Ultra experiments. Now, part of the MK Ultra experiments were providing individuals from difficult backgrounds, say people that found themselves in prison or recreational centres, these sort of things, with illicit substance as to see what the outcome would be. Now, Charles Manson himself was... He cultivated his cult through the use of through the use of LSD. LSD was an absolutely integral part of his cultivation of his cult, say, because he would set up these scenarios and these performances whilst people were fucking off wherever they were on LSD, that created this idea that he was kind of a godly entity to them, who then, of course, given the fact that his disciples, they are called, perceived him as essentially godlike, they began to worship him, and they began to become enthralled with him to the point where they would do whatever he liked, which of course led to the Tate LaBianca murders, which were a series of killings that were essentially carried out because Charles Manson was upset that he did not get a recording contract. So that's a little snippet of what happened with Charles Manson and MK Ultra. If you would like to go into something with that, I say I'd be happy to make a video on that and go into that properly. But if that's something that interests you, then put that in the comments and I'll see what, I'll get a video out for that. But as we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, ignorance, value it, really value it. And when you're starting something new and when you're putting yourself in new and interesting positions, do your best to keep somewhat of a hold on the fact that you are in a unique and once in a lifetime opportunity circumstance. As I say, you might experience this thing a few times, but you only really get it once. Don't grow up too fast. And ignorance isn't always a bad thing. Take care, boys. Thank you for watching.